The silence of deep space was broken by the arrival of something terrible. Massive ships appeared from nowhere, their hulls gleaming like deadly stars against the darkness. These weren't just any ships, they were the pride of the Veltharan Empire, each one the size of a small city and packed with enough firepower to turn entire worlds into ash and dust. Admiral Kethmar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the small blue planet ahead through the massive viewscreen. His forearms moved gracefully as he studied the tactical displays, each one showing the overwhelming force he commanded. 10,000 warships, 10,000 instruments of destruction, all aimed at one tiny world that dared to exist in space. The Veltharans now claimed as their own. The Admiral's scaled face showed something that might have been amusement. According to their intelligence, the creatures on this planet called Earth were nothing more than clever animals. They had barely managed to leave their own atmosphere, using primitive rockets that burned fossil fuels like some ancient relic. Their most advanced weapons were crude nuclear devices that could barely scratch the paint on a Veltharan cruiser. This would be easy. Too easy, perhaps. Kethmar had conquered 47 worlds in his career. He had seen species that could manipulate gravity with their minds, others that could survive in the vacuum of space without protection. He had faced warriors who could tear through steel with their bare hands and machines that could think faster than any organic brain. All of them had fallen before the might of the Veltharan Empire, but humans? The reports were almost insulting. They fought each other with chemical explosives and metal projectiles. They traveled between their own planets, using chemical rockets that took months to reach their nearest neighbor. They had no unified government, no advanced technology, no understanding of the greater galaxy around them. The armada moved forward like a swarm of metal predators, each ship's engines casting blue light across the void. The formation was perfect. Thousands of years of military tradition shaped into an unstoppable force. Dreadnoughts that could level mountains moved alongside carriers filled with fighter craft. Support ships carried enough ammunition to wage war for decades. As they passed the orbit of the planet they called Mars, Kethmar allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The humans had no idea what was coming. Their primitive sensors might detect the fleet eventually, but by then it would be far too late. The Veltharan way was swift and absolute. They would demand surrender, and when the humans inevitably refused, they would demonstrate why resistance was futile. The blue planet grew larger in the viewscreen, its white clouds swirling peacefully over brown and green continents. Somewhere down there, billions of humans were going about their daily lives, completely unaware that their world was about to change forever. Some would surrender and be allowed to serve the Empire. Others would resist and be eliminated. It was the natural order of things. The strong consumed the weak, and the Veltharans were the strongest species the galaxy had ever known. At least, that's what Admiral Kethmar believed as his fleet moved into position around Earth. The alarm buzzed softly in the underground facility, buried 3 miles beneath the Colorado mountains. Dr. Jiwon barely looked up from her coffee as she acknowledged the signal. After 15 years of monitoring deep space, she had seen plenty of false alarms. Asteroid clusters, solar flares, even old satellites drifting into scanner range, they all triggered the same alert. But this time was different. Her eyes widened as the data streamed across her screens. The computer was detecting not 1 or 2 objects, but thousands. All moving in perfect formation, all heading directly toward Earth at speeds that should have been impossible. Within minutes, secure communication lines crackled to life across the globe. In a bunker beneath Seoul, President Minho received the call he had hoped would never come. His hands remained steady as he listened to the report, but his mind raced through procedures that had been drilled into every world leader for the past 50 years. "Confirm the signatures," he said quietly into the encrypted phone. "Are we certain?" "These are artificial constructs." The answer came back immediately. Not only were they artificial, but they were massive. Each ship was easily the size of a skyscraper, and there were thousands of them arranged in military formation. This wasn't a peaceful exploration mission. Minho's next call went to a number that officially didn't exist. The man who answered had been waiting by his phone for decades, knowing this moment would eventually arrive. General Hyunwoo's voice was calm, almost relieved. "Sir, we're ready to implement Phoenix Protocol." Across the world, a dozen government officials received similar calls. In hidden command centers that the public had never heard of, massive screens lit up with tactical displays. These weren't the primitive military installations that satellite images showed to the world. These were the real command centers, built with technology that would have seemed like magic just decades earlier. The general public noticed nothing at first. News broadcasts continued their normal programming. Social media buzzed with everyday concerns. People went to work, attended school, lived their lives without knowing that everything was about to change. But those who knew what to look for began to see the signs. In major cities around the world, emergency services began conducting what they called routine evacuation drills. Government officials started canceling public appearances. Military personnel disappeared on sudden training exercises that lasted indefinitely. Minho stood at his office window, looking out at the bustling streets of Seoul. Cars moved through traffic, people walked on sidewalks, children played in parks. None of them knew that alien warships were approaching their world. None of them understood that their leaders had been preparing for this day since the first radio telescopes detected organized signals from distant stars decades ago. The president's secure phone rang again. This time, it was Admiral Soo-young, calling from a facility so classified that even most government officials didn't know it existed. Her voice carried a confidence that surprised him. "Mr. President, all defense systems are online and ready. The sleeping giant protocol is active. We just need your authorization to proceed to the next phase." Minho took a deep breath, knowing that his next words would determine the fate of humanity itself. Admiral Kethmar felt a surge of satisfaction as his communication specialists decoded the streams of data flowing from the blue planet. The humans were making no effort to hide their transmissions, broadcasting everything openly into space, like children shouting in a playground. His tactical officer, a seasoned warrior named Vextal, read from the intercepts with obvious amusement. "Admiral, their news broadcasts are discussing something called gas prices and debates about renewable energy. They're still burning fossil fuels for transportation." Kethmar's 4 eyes gleamed with predatory interest. "What about their space capabilities?" "Pathetic, sir. Their most advanced spacecraft took 9 months to reach their own moon. They have a few small research stations orbiting their planet, but nothing that could threaten even our smallest scout ship." Vextal pulled up another transmission. "Listen to this. They're celebrating because they successfully landed a small robot on their neighboring planet. A robot, Admiral. Not even a crewed mission." The bridge crew erupted in clicking, sounds that passed for laughter among their species. These humans were even more primitive than their intelligence had suggested. Kethmar had conquered civilizations that could travel between stars in days, and here were creatures celebrating a robotic probe that took years to reach the next rock. In their solar system, what the Veltheran Admiral didn't know was that 3 miles beneath the Nevada desert, Captain Daehyun was carefully monitoring every transmission his fleet received. The humans sat in a control room that would have made Kethmar's bridge look primitive by comparison, surrounded by holographic displays showing real-time data from across the solar system. "They're buying it completely," Daehyun reported to his superior through an encrypted quantum channel. "Our fake broadcasts are working perfectly. They think we're still struggling with chemical rockets and fossil fuels." The deception had taken decades to perfect. Every news broadcast, every internet posting, every radio transmission that leaked into space was carefully crafted to maintain the illusion of a primitive civilization. Real human technology remained, hidden beneath mountains, under ocean floors, and in facilities that didn't officially exist. While Admiral Kethmar read reports about humans debating electric cars, the truth lay buried beneath his feet. Fusion reactors the size of city blocks hummed quietly in underground chambers, providing clean energy that made their fossil fuel dependency look like a child's toy. These reactors didn't just power cities, they charged weapon systems that could crack planets in half. The Veltherans intercepted discussions about humanity's first steps toward sustainable energy, never suspecting that humans had mastered fusion power before their grandparents were born. They laughed at reports of humans struggling to build a permanent moon base, unaware that thriving cities already existed beneath the lunar surface, hidden from any orbital observation. Kethmar reviewed the strategic assessment with growing confidence. Their largest military vessels are primitive metal ships that float on their oceans. Their flying machines are powered by burning refined fossil fuels. They fight each other with chemical explosives. What he didn't see were the real human military. Installations, camouflaged so perfectly that they appeared to be natural mountains and islands. Each one contained enough firepower to sterilize entire star systems, but to alien sensors, they looked like nothing more than geological formations. The deception was perfect, and the Veltharans were walking straight into humanity's trap. The Mai. Veltharan fleet settled into orbit around Earth like a swarm of metal vultures. Admiral Kethmar stood on his bridge, watching the blue planet rotate slowly beneath his ships. The time for subtlety had passed. Now came the moment every conquered species experienced, the demand for surrender. "Open all communication channels," Kethmar commanded. "Broadcast on every frequency these primitives use." His voice boomed across Earth's radio waves, television networks, and internet systems. The message was simple and had been delivered to 47 worlds before this one. "Inhabitants of the third planet, you are now subjects of the Veltharan Empire. Surrender immediately, and your deaths will be swift. Resist and your world will burn." Kethmar expected panic. He expected desperate pleas for mercy, or perhaps defiant but ultimately meaningless threats from whatever crude military these humans possessed. What he didn't expect was silence. For exactly 27 seconds, Earth made no response at all. Then a new voice cut through the communication channels. It was calm, professional, and carried an authority that made Kethmar's scales ripple with unease. The speaker was a human female, but her words carried no fear, no desperation. "Veltharan Fleet, this is Admiral Suyung of the Terran Defense Collective. You have entered our space without permission and threatened our world. You now have 30 seconds to reverse course and leave our solar system. This is your only warning." Kethmar's jaw dropped open, revealing rows of razor-sharp teeth. The bridge crew stared at their screens in disbelief. A human, a member of a species that barely knew how to leave their own atmosphere, was giving them an ultimatum. It was like a rabbit threatening a pack of wolves. "Terran Defense Collective?" Vextal checked his databases frantically. "Admiral, we have no record of any such organization. Our intelligence shows no unified human military command." The Veltharan admiral's shock quickly turned to rage. How dare these primitives mock him? He had reduced entire star systems to rubble, and now these insects thought they could negotiate with him. "Pathetic creatures," Kethmar snarled into the communication system. "You have no idea what you're dealing with. We are the Veltharan Empire. We have conquered 1,000 worlds. Your primitive species will learn to kneel before us, or we will reduce your planet to ash." Admiral Suyung's response came immediately, her voice still maddeningly calm. "Admiral Kethmar, you have 20 seconds remaining." The casual use of his name sent a chill through the Veltharan commander. How could they possibly know who he was? Their intelligence networks weren't supposed to extend beyond their own planet. "Begin orbital bombardment," Kethmar ordered, his voice shaking with fury. "Target their major population centers. Show these insects what happens when they defy the Empire." What Admiral Kethmar didn't understand was that he was dealing with a species that had clawed its way to the top of one of the most dangerous planets in the galaxy. For millions of years, humans had survived ice ages, volcanic eruptions, plague, and countless predators that would have destroyed weaker species. They had turned warfare into an art form, competing against each other in conflicts that spanned continents and consumed entire generations. And for the past century, ever since their first radio telescopes detected organized signals from distant stars, humanity had been preparing for the ultimate predator, one that would come from space itself. The 30 seconds were almost up. The countdown reached 0. And Admiral Kethmar's fleet opened fire. Streams of superheated plasma rained down from orbit, each blast carrying enough energy to vaporize a city block. The Veltharan weapons had reduced mighty fortress worlds to smoking craters, and now they painted Earth's atmosphere with deadly light. New York, London, Tokyo, Seoul. Every major population center became a target as the alien fleet unleashed hell from above. Kethmar watched the destruction through his view screen with grim satisfaction. The humans had been given their chance. Now they would learn the price of defying the Veltharan Empire. He expected to see massive explosions, collapsing skyscrapers, and the unmistakable signs of a civilization dying in fire. Instead, something impossible happened. The bombardment struck Earth's surface with devastating force, but where Kethmar expected to see cities burning, he saw only empty shells crumbling into dust. The towering skyscrapers that should have been filled with screaming humans collapsed to reveal nothing but hollow frameworks. The busy streets that satellite images had shown packed with vehicles were revealed as elaborate stage sets. What is this? Vextal stared at his instruments in confusion. Admiral, the thermal readings don't match. These structures show no heat, signatures consistent with inhabited buildings. But that wasn't the most shocking discovery. As the bombardment continued, the planet itself began to change. What the Veltharans had taken for natural mountains suddenly split open, revealing massive, metallic structures hidden within. The rocky surfaces had been nothing more than camouflage, concealing installations that dwarfed anything in the alien fleet. On the moon, entire sections of the lunar surface retracted like mechanical iris doors. What had appeared to be ancient impact craters were actually the concealed barrels of weapons so large that each one could have served as a space station. The moon itself wasn't just a natural satellite. It had been converted into humanity's ultimate fortress. Deep beneath Earth's oceans, what sensors had registered as natural trenches began to glow with energy buildup. Massive structures rose from the seafloor, shedding their camouflage of coral and sediment to reveal gleaming weapons platforms that had been waiting in darkness for decades. Admiral Suyung's voice cut through the chaos with the same calm professionalism as before. Admiral Kethmar, you have just attacked decoy structures. Earth's actual population has been living safely in our underground cities for the past 70 years. Our surface installations were maintained purely for the benefit of alien observers. 3 miles beneath Manhattan, millions of humans went about their daily lives in vast caverns carved from solid rock. Underground farms fed entire populations using hydroponic systems that made surface agriculture look primitive. Maglev trains shot through tunnels that connected continents, moving at speeds that would have impressed even advanced alien civilizations. The real Earth had been hidden from view for generations, while aliens looking down from space saw a primitive world struggling with pollution and resource scarcity. The truth was that humanity had moved beyond such concerns long ago. Their surface world was nothing more than an elaborate theater, designed to fool exactly the kind of predators now orbiting their planet. Kethmar's bombardment had accomplished nothing except revealing that everything he thought he knew about humanity was a carefully constructed lie. And now, as Earth's true defenses came online, the Veltharan Admiral was about to discover just how dangerous cornered humans could be. Admiral Suyung stood in the command center, buried 5 miles beneath the Pacific Ocean, her eyes fixed on the holographic display showing the Veltharan fleet in orbit. Around her, dozens of technicians worked at stations that hummed with barely contained energy. The moment she had trained for her entire life had finally arrived. "All stations report ready, Admiral," called out Commander Jinyuk from his position at the tactical console. "Project Titan is fully operational and awaiting your command." Soo-young took a deep breath. What she was about to unleash would change everything. The carefully maintained illusion of human weakness was about to be shattered forever. Authorization code Omega 77 Alpha. Execute Project Titan. Across the solar system, objects that had drifted silently through space for decades suddenly came to life. What alien sensors had dismissed as common asteroids began to unfold like deadly flowers, revealing the sophisticated weapons platforms hidden within. The rocky exteriors had been perfect camouflage, but now they split apart to expose gleaming metal surfaces covered in arrays of technology that shouldn't have existed on a primitive world. Near Jupiter, a chunk of space debris that had been catalogued as wreckage from an old human probe suddenly powered up. Its hull plates retracted, revealing a massive particle accelerator that had been dormant for 20 years. Similar transformations occurred throughout the solar system. Defunct satellites came back to life, meteor fragments revealed their true nature, and pieces of space junk that had been floating aimlessly for decades suddenly began moving with deadly purpose. The technology powering these weapons hadn't been invented by humans. It had been reverse-engineered from previous visitors who had made the same fatal mistake as the Veltharans. Over the past century, 17 different alien species had approached Earth with conquest in mind. Each had seen the same primitive broadcasts, the same chemical rockets, the same apparent technological limitations. None of them had left to tell their empires what they had discovered. Their ships had been captured, their weapons studied, their technology absorbed and improved upon. Human engineers had spent decades perfecting these alien designs, creating weapons that combined the best features of multiple civilizations. The Veltharans' energy shields were powerful, but humans had encountered that same technology 40 years ago and had already developed countermeasures. Commander Jinhyuk's voice was steady as he reported the activation sequence. "All platforms online, Admiral. We have targeting locks on the entire enemy fleet. Gravitic disruptors are charged and ready. Energy cannon arrays are at full power." The Veltharan fleet had no idea what was about to hit them. Their sensors couldn't detect the weapons platforms because they were using stealth technology borrowed from the Kytherian Empire, species number 11 on humanity's list of would-be conquerors. The targeting systems were based on designs taken from the Mordak Collective, while the energy weapons themselves were improved versions of technology stolen from the Zephyrian Brotherhood. Admiral Suyong watched as thousands of targeting reticles appeared on her display, each one locked onto a different Veltharan ship. The enemy fleet was perfectly positioned, spread out in a standard bombardment formation that made them easy targets for the weapons now trained on them. "Fire," she commanded quietly. In the span of a single heartbeat, humanity's hidden arsenal unleashed devastation on a scale that would have impressed the gods of ancient mythology. The first wave of energy struck the Veltharan fleet like an invisible hammer of the gods. Admiral Kethamar felt his flagship shudder as weapons fire that shouldn't have been possible slammed into their shields. The defensive barriers that had protected Veltharan ships for 1,000 years flickered like candle flames in a hurricane. Warning alarms screamed across the bridge as power readings spiked beyond anything the instruments could measure. "Shields at 60%, Vextal shouted over the chaos. "How is that possible? These humans don't have the technology to penetrate our defenses." But the assault had only just begun. From every direction, beams of coherent energy lanced through space with surgical precision. Each shot was perfectly calculated, striking at the exact frequency needed to destabilize Veltharan shield generators. The humans had studied captured alien technology for decades, learning every weakness, every flaw in the designs. The mathematical precision was terrifying. While the Veltharans had conquered through brute force and overwhelming numbers, humanity had turned warfare into an exact science. Every weapon discharge was calculated to the microsecond, every targeting solution optimized for maximum destruction with minimum energy expenditure. Kethmar watched in disbelief as his mighty dreadnought, Stellar Conqueror, simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, a kilometer-long engine of destruction that had reduced planets to ash. The next moment, it was expanding particles of superheated metal, torn apart at the molecular level by weapons that turned matter itself into energy. "Impossible," he whispered, but the evidence was undeniable. His fleet was being systematically destroyed by an enemy that had appeared from nowhere. The human weapons didn't just destroy ships, they erased them. Gravitic disruptors twisted space-time around their targets, creating localized black holes. That lasted for microseconds but left nothing behind. Particle beams accelerated matter to near light speed, turning the Veltharan's own hull armor into devastating projectiles that shredded nearby vessels. "Admiral," Vextal's voice cracked with terror. "We're losing 17 ships per second. At this rate, the entire fleet will be gone in under 4 minutes." Kethmar tried to rally his forces, but the communication networks were already failing. The humans had somehow identified and targeted every command ship, every communication relay, every strategic node in the Veltharan formation. It was as if they had complete blueprints of Veltharan military doctrine, because they did. The Veltharans weren't the first empire to threaten Earth with overwhelming force. They were simply the latest in a long line of civilizations that had mistaken human appearance for human capability. With shaking hands, Kethmar activated the emergency beacon that would carry word back to the Veltharan Empire. "High Command, this is Admiral Kethmar. The humans, they're not what we thought. They have weapons beyond our understanding. The fleet is lost. I repeat, the fleet is..." The transmission cut off as the flagship's hull buckled under gravitational forces that crushed it like an empty shell. Kethmar had just enough time to see Earth hanging peacefully in space, its blue oceans and white clouds unchanged by the battle raging in orbit above. 10,000 ships that had terrorized the galaxy became 10,000 points of light, briefly, illuminating the void before fading to nothing. The engagement lasted exactly 3 minutes and 47 seconds, from first shot to final destruction. In her underground command center, Admiral Suyong watched the tactical display clear of enemy contacts. "Stand down all weapons. Begin debris collection operations. We have a message to send." The silence in Admiral Suyong's command center was broken only by the gentle hum of machinery and the soft clicking of keyboards. Around her, technicians worked with quiet efficiency, their faces illuminated by the blue glow of holographic displays, showing the aftermath of humanity's overwhelming victory. "Admiral," Commander Jinhyuk reported, his voice steady despite what they had just witnessed, "all Veltharan vessels have been eliminated. We're detecting no survivors, no escape pods, no distress beacons. The threat has been completely neutralized." Suyong nodded, but her expression remained serious. Destroying the invasion fleet was only the beginning. The real work was about to start. "Initiate Phase 2. Deploy the hunter-killer probes along the enemy's approach vector." Across the solar system, launch bays that had been hidden within asteroids and disguised installations began opening. What emerged weren't the crude chemical rockets that alien observers had grown accustomed to seeing from humanity. These were sleek, intelligent machines, no larger than a car but packed with technology that represented centuries of advancement. The probes were humanity's ultimate insurance policy. Each one was capable of self-replication using raw materials, from asteroids and dead planets, to create copies of itself. They were powered by miniature fusion reactors that could run for thousands of years, and their hulls were coated with metamaterials that made them nearly invisible to conventional sensors. But their most impressive feature wasn't their stealth or their longevity. It was their artificial intelligence. Each probe carried a learning computer that could analyze alien technology, decode communication protocols, and adapt to new threats in real time. They were scouts, spies, and weapons, all rolled into one. Probes. "Hurry away, Admiral," reported Lieutenant Minsu from the tactical station. "They're following the Veltharan fleet's hyperspace trail. Estimated time to reach their home system is 18 months. The probes would trace the route back to Veltharan space like bloodhounds following a scent. Along the way, they would map every military installation, every shipyard, every strategic resource the Empire possessed. They would infiltrate communication networks, study defensive systems, and catalog the strength of every world under Veltharan control. More importantly, they carried a message. Admiral Suyong had spent hours crafting the words, knowing they would be the first official communication between humanity and the galactic community at large. The message was programmed in over 3,000 languages, every known form of communication humanity had encountered from their previous alien visitors. The text was simple, direct, and impossible to misunderstand. The species known as humans inhabits the third planet of the star you designate Sol. We do not seek conquest or expansion beyond our solar system. We desire only to be left in peace. This message serves as notification that any hostile action against our world will result in the complete extinction of the aggressor species. We have the capability to carry out this threat. The fate of the Veltharan invasion fleet serves as proof of our resolve. The message would be delivered to every major government, military installation, and communication hub the probes encountered. It would be broadcast on every frequency, transmitted through every network and stored in every database they could access. But the probes carried more than just words. Hidden within their programming was something far more terrifying, complete. Tactical data on how to locate and destroy any civilization that might threaten Earth. If humanity's warning was ignored, the probes would transform from messengers into instruments of extinction. Estimated delivery time, So-Yung asked. The message will reach major galactic powers within 2 years, Admiral, Jin-Yuk replied. After that, it's up to them whether they choose wisdom or war. The Great Assembly Hall of the Galactic Council had never seen such chaos. Representatives from hundreds of worlds filled the massive chamber, their voices creating a din that echoed off the crystalline walls. For the first time in recorded history, every seat was occupied. Even species that had been at war with each other for centuries sat side by side, united by a fear that transcended their petty conflicts. Chancellor Mordek, a towering figure from the ancient Therian collective, called for order with a voice that boomed across the assembly. His forearms gestured for silence as holographic displays flickered to life around the chamber, showing star maps that told a story of unprecedented destruction. Honored delegates, Mordek began, his voice heavy with the weight of what he was about to reveal. 3 months ago, the Veltheran Empire launched what they claimed would be their greatest conquest. 10,000 ships, led by their most experienced admiral, set course for a primitive world in the Outer Rim. We expected to receive reports of another successful campaign within days. The chamber fell silent. Everyone knew what had happened. Next, but hearing it spoken aloud made it real in a way that private intelligence reports could not. Instead, we received nothing. Complete silence. Our long-range sensors detected massive energy discharges consistent with fleet-scale combat, but they lasted less than 4 minutes, then nothing. A representative from the Kalari Federation, her blue skin pale with fear, spoke up. Chancellor, our deep space monitors recorded the destruction. The energy signatures were unlike anything in our databases. Whatever destroyed the Veltharan, fleet used technology we don't understand. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. The Veltheran Empire had been one of the galaxy's dominant military powers. Their ships had been feared across 1,000 systems. The idea that they could be wiped out in minutes was almost impossible to comprehend. That's not the worst part, Mordek continued, activating another holographic display. Our reconnaissance teams reached Veltharan space 2 weeks ago. What they found defies explanation. The images that appeared in the chamber drew gasps of horror from the assembled delegates. Veltharan worlds hung in space like broken toys. Every military installation had been systematically destroyed. Orbital shipyards that had taken centuries to build were nothing but expanding debris fields. Naval academies, weapons research facilities, strategic command centers, all reduced to atoms with surgical precision. But the civilian populations were untouched. Cities remained intact, commerce continued, children played in parks. Whatever had destroyed the Veltharan military had been careful to avoid harming non-combatants. It was a display of power and restraint that was somehow more terrifying than indiscriminate destruction would have been. The humans did this, whispered Ambassador Kretal from the Mordak Collective. Those primitive creatures we've been ignoring. For decades, they've been watching us, studying us, preparing for us. As if summoned by her words, a new holographic display activated in the center of the chamber. The message was simple, transmitted in perfect galactic standard and dozens of other languages simultaneously. To the Galactic Council, Earth extends. An invitation for peaceful diplomatic contact. We suggest that all previous intelligence regarding human technological capabilities be considered obsolete. We look forward to productive discussions about our shared future among the stars. The message was signed by someone called Admiral So-Yung, Terran Defense Collective, and included coordinates for a meeting location in neutral space. Chancellor. Mordek looked around the silent chamber, seeing his own thoughts reflected in hundreds of alien faces. The galaxy had just discovered it was sharing space with apex predators who had been hiding in plain sight. The age of underestimating humanity was over.